My hands trembled as I stood at the gate of the wedding hall. My heart dropped into my stomach. Right there, hanging on the tall iron gate for everyone to see, was my photograph. Across it, in bold black letters, were the words, "Do not let her in." For a moment, I could not breathe. The sun above me felt as if it was burning my very soul. Guests dressed in colorful clothes walked past me, their eyes flicking from the paper to my face. Some turned away quickly, others whispered. Shame rushed over me like a flood. This was my own daughter's wedding day, and I, her mother, was being banned like an enemy. I knew at once who had done this. It was not my daughter. She loved me. No, it was her fiancé. Or rather, the woman who had whispered her poison into his ear, his fiancé's mother. For weeks, she had treated me like a shadow, pushing me aside, acting as if I did not exist. I could smell her hand in this cruel trick. My knees weakened, but I refused to let them see me fall. I did not cry. I simply turned around, walked slowly away from the gate, and when I reached the corner of the street, I pulled out my phone. I made one call. Just one. And 4 hours later, when the ceremony was in full swing, a surprise guest walked in that left everyone speechless. But before I tell you who that guest was, let me take you back to the beginning of this story. My name is Margaret, and I am 67 years old. I live in Charleston, South Carolina, here in the United States of America. Before I continue this story, I want you, my dear viewers, to subscribe, like, and click that notification button so you don't miss the rest of what is coming. Believe me, you don't want to miss it. And please tell me from which part of the country you are watching from, because I love knowing where my family of listeners are joining me from. Now let us return to the story. I raised my daughter, Clara, all by myself. Her father walked out on us when she was only 2 years old. For many years, I worked 3 jobs just to keep a roof over our heads and food on the table. I scrubbed floors, cooked in diners, and sewed clothes until my fingers ached. But no matter how hard life became, I never once regretted the sacrifices. Clara was my pride, my treasure, my only joy in this world. Clara grew up to be beautiful and smart. She had a smile that could light up the darkest room. She was also stubborn like me. When she turned 25, she met Richard, a tall, charming young man who, at first, seemed like every mother's dream for her daughter. He was polite when he came around, always wearing that wide smile that made even strangers trust him. At first, I thought maybe, just maybe, God had finally rewarded all my years of suffering with this blessing. But blessings can sometimes wear masks. The first crack I saw in Richard's mask was small. He would make little jokes about my clothes, saying things like, "Oh, Mrs. Margaret, do you always wear old-fashioned dresses?" He would laugh, but the laugh didn't reach his eyes. I brushed it off at first. After all, young people are different these days, I told myself. But soon, the jokes grew sharper. He began to forget to greet me. Sometimes, when I visited Clara's apartment, he would whisper something into her ear and suddenly she would rush me out, saying they were busy. I noticed how Clara's face would cloud with worry when I left. One day, Clara confessed. "Mama, Richard thinks you interfere too much in my life," she said softly. My heart broke, but I smiled. "I only want your happiness, baby. I will step back." And I did. I gave them space. I stopped visiting too often. Even though my arms ached to hold my daughter, I thought it would help. But it didn't. Instead, it gave Richard and his family more room to push me further away. Then came the day he proposed. Clara was overjoyed. She ran into my house screaming, "Mama, he asked me. I'm getting married." Her joy was like sunlight pouring into my old home. I hugged her tightly, hiding the lump in my throat. Because deep inside I was afraid. Afraid that this marriage would cost me my daughter. And I was right. The wedding preparations began. Richard's family, wealthy and proud, took over everything. They chose the venue, the colors, even the food. I was treated like a guest, not the mother of the bride. Whenever I tried to suggest something, his mother, Deborah, would smile coldly and say, "Don't worry, Margaret. We've got this covered." But I knew what she really meant. "You are not needed here." Still, I swallowed my pride. This was Clara's big day, not mine. I wanted her to be happy. But little did I know, Deborah and Richard were planning the cruelest humiliation of all. On the morning of the wedding, I woke up early dressed in my best gown. A navy blue dress I had saved up to buy for this special day. My hands shook as I fixed the pearl necklace that once belonged to my mother. I looked in the mirror and whispered, "Today, you will see your baby girl become a wife. Smile, Margaret." No tears. I arrived at the venue with hope in my heart. But the moment I saw that paper at the gate, hope shattered into pieces. The sign with my face. The cruel words. The whispers. The shame. And yet, I did not fight. I did not scream. I simply turned and walked away. Because I knew something they did not know. And with that one phone call I made, everything was about to change. Now, dear viewers, that is where I will pause for today. What happened after that phone call is a storm you cannot imagine. In the next part, I will take you deeper, step by step, into the fire and the secrets that led to that shocking moment, and the surprise guest who arrived 4 hours later to turn the wedding upside down. As I walked away from the wedding gate that morning, clutching my purse like it was my only shield, my heart was heavy, but my mind was clear. I had spent too many years on this earth to waste my tears in front of people who wanted to see me broken. I had raised a child alone, faced hunger and fought against loneliness. This was just another storm, and storms always pass. I found a bench near the bus stop, sat down and scrolled through my phone. My hand shook as I dialed the number, but I pressed call anyway. The voice on the other end answered after the second ring. "Hello. It's me," I said quietly. There was a pause, then a calm, deep voice replied, "Margaret? What's wrong?" I swallowed hard. "It's Clara's wedding. They've banned me from going inside." The voice grew sharp with concern. "What? How dare they? You're her mother." "I know," I whispered, staring at the busy street in front of me. "But I don't want to fight. I need you to come." There was no hesitation. "I'll be there." And just like that, I hung up. My heart pounded in my chest. That was all I needed to do. One call. Now I just had to wait. Hours passed. I sat in a little cafe nearby, watching through the window as cars full of guests arrived at the venue. Laughter floated through the air, carried on the music that drifted from inside the hall. My daughter was in there, probably smiling, probably nervous, maybe even looking for me. Did she notice I wasn't there? Did she ask about me? My chest tightened as I thought of her walking down the aisle without me by her side. That was the low moment. The ache of being unseen, of being erased. But life has a strange way of balancing things. For hours later, I heard the sound of a car engine outside the cafe. When I turned my head, my eyes widened. The person who stepped out of that black car was not only unexpected, but powerful enough to shake the wedding to its very foundation. But let me not rush. Before that car arrived, I need you to understand how the cracks in this family had been forming for months. Richard's mother, Deborah, had always believed she was better than me. She wore her wealth like a crown and looked at me like I was the dirt beneath her shoes. I remember one afternoon, months before the wedding, when Clara had invited me over for lunch. I brought with me a homemade pie, Clara's favorite from childhood. When Deborah saw it, she wrinkled her nose. "Oh, Margaret, still baking like it's the 1950s? My son prefers modern desserts." I laughed softly, even though the comment stung. "Clara loves this pie." Deborah leaned closer, her voice low but sharp as a knife. "She won't need your pies much longer. She'll have a new family. Don't cling too tightly." That day I went home and cried. But I also made a silent promise. I would not let anyone erase my place in my daughter's life. So when I made that phone call on her wedding day, it wasn't out of revenge. It was out of love. Out of the need to protect her from walking blindly into a trap. And now back to that car. The moment the door opened and the surprise guests stepped out, whispers filled the air. Guests turned, their jaws dropping. Even the music inside seemed to pause as if the instruments themselves were shocked. The person who arrived was someone Deborah and Richard never thought would appear. Someone whose presence alone was enough to turn smiles into gasps and whispers into silence. And when that person stepped through the wedding gate, all eyes followed them. That was when the storm truly began. The moment the black car door opened, time seemed to freeze. The sound of laughter from inside the hall died down, conversations halted, and even the guards at the gate shifted nervously. A tall figure stepped out. dressed sharply in a dark gray suit, with silver hair catching the late afternoon sun. My heart nearly stopped. It was Clara's father, the man who had walked out on us when Clara was 2 years old. The man who had abandoned me to raise her alone, without a dollar or a goodbye. And now here he was, uninvited, arriving like a storm on my daughter's wedding day. The guests recognized him before Clara did. Some of Richard's family members had heard whispers of him. Stories about his wealth, his connections, his mysterious disappearance. They knew he had once been a powerful man, but very few knew why he left. To most, he was just a rumor. And now, he was real, standing at the gate with an authority that made everyone move aside without question. Gasps and murmurs spread like wildfire. Is that? It can't be. But I thought he was gone for good. The guards, who only hours before had shown my photo with the cruel words "Do not let her in," now froze in confusion. They didn't know what to do. And then, with slow, deliberate steps, Clara's father walked straight past the gate, past the shock stairs, into the wedding hall itself. My heart was torn. On one hand, I hated him with every bone in my body for abandoning us. On the other hand, he was the father of my child, and his presence here was not by accident. He was the surprise guest I had summoned with that one phone call. Yes, it was me who had called him. But why? Let me take you back many years before this moment, so you understand why his arrival was more than just a shock. It was the key to everything. When Clara was born, her father, James, was already restless. He loved freedom more than family. He claimed he loved us, but I always felt he was one step away from running. And one day he did. He left a note on the kitchen table. "I can't do this. Don't look for me." I never saw him again. Or so I thought. Years later, when Clara was 16, I received a letter with no return address. Inside was a single line. "I'm watching. I'm proud of her." That was it. No apology, no explanation. I burned the letter that night and swore never to tell Clara. To her he was gone. To me he was a ghost. But ghosts have a way of returning when least expected. When I saw that cruel sign on the wedding gate with my photo on it, something inside me snapped. I realized that Deborah and Richard were trying to erase me, the woman who gave Clara life. They wanted me out of the picture forever. But there was one person they could never ignore. One person whose presence would shake their pride and reveal truths they would rather stay hidden. James. That was why I made that phone call. That was why I summoned the very man who once broke me. Because sometimes you must use even the sharpest thorn to protect your rose. Now back to the wedding hall. The moment James entered, the music stopped. Clara, standing at the altar in her beautiful white gown, gasped loudly. Her bouquet slipped from her hands and hit the floor. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice trembling. The crowd erupted in confusion. Deborah, who had been smiling smugly only moments earlier, turned pale. Richard's face twisted with shock, then anger. James lifted his hand slightly, silencing the noise. His deep voice carried through the room. "Yes, Clara. It's me. Your father." Clara ran forward, tears streaming down her face. She collapsed into his arms, sobbing uncontrollably. "You're here. I thought you were gone forever." The sight tore at my heart. For years, she had carried the emptiness of not knowing her father. And now in one moment he had returned, filling that hole with his presence. The guests clapped nervously, unsure of whether to celebrate or stay silent. But not everyone was happy. Deborah stormed forward, her eyes blazing. "What is the meaning of this?" she snapped. "Who allowed you in here?" James turned to her slowly, his sharp gaze cutting through her pride. "I don't need permission to attend my daughter's wedding. I am her father." The hall erupted into murmurs again. Deborah looked shaken but quickly regained her composure. "You abandoned them. You have no right. That's between me and Margaret," James interrupted firmly. His words silenced her like a whip crack. For the first time since this wedding began, I felt power shift in the room. Deborah was no longer in control. Her plan to erase me had failed. Clara, still holding on to James, turned to Richard. "Did you know about this? Did you know my father was alive?" Richard stammered, his face red. "I heard rumors, but I didn't think." "Didn't think what?" Clara demanded, her voice trembling with anger. Didn't think I deserved to know? The tension in the room grew unbearable. Guests shifted uncomfortably, whispering, eyes darting from Clara to Richard to James. The ceremony, which should have been filled with joy, now felt like a battlefield. And then came the high moment, the one that shocked everyone even more. James reached into his pocket, pulled out a folded paper, and raised it high. Before this wedding continues, there is something everyone needs to see, he declared. Deborah's face drained of color. Richard froze. Clara gasped. What is that? Clara asked, her voice shaking. James unfolded the paper slowly, his eyes never leaving Richard's. Proof, he said. Proof that this marriage should not happen. The crowd gasped so loudly it was like thunder rolling through the hall. Guests stood on their toes, trying to see what was written on the paper. Clara's hands trembled as she reached for it, but James held it back for the moment. Richard's voice cracked with panic. Don't listen to him. He's just trying to ruin everything. But his voice betrayed him. Sweat dripped down his forehead, his hands shook. He looked guilty. Too guilty. Deborah lunged forward. Stop this. Don't you dare. But James only lifted the paper higher, his voice like steel. The truth always comes out. And today it will. The guests fell silent, every eye locked on that single piece of paper. Clara's breathing grew heavy, her tears mixing with fear. Daddy, what is it? What proof? James looked straight at her, his voice steady but filled with sorrow. Proof that Richard is already married. The hall exploded. Screams, gasps, cries. Chaos broke out instantly. Clara stumbled back, nearly falling. Richard rushed forward, reaching for her, but she slapped his hand away, her face twisted with disbelief. What? She shouted. Tell me it's not true. Richard stuttered, but no words came. His silence was louder than any confession. And as the crowd descended into chaos, James handed the paper to Clara. She stared at it with wide, trembling eyes, her lips forming the words as she read. Marriage certificate. Richard Thompson, and, her voice broke. And another woman. The hall erupted again, louder this time. Guests began pulling out their phones, snapping photos, recording the scandal. And then, just as Clara dropped the paper and screamed, the doors of the hall burst open. Another woman, dressed in black, stormed in. She was young, furious, and holding a baby in her arms. All eyes turned to her. The baby wailed loudly, as if crying out the truth for everyone to hear. The woman's voice echoed through the hall like a clap of thunder. Yes, he's already married to me. And this is his child. The room fell silent for a single, breathless moment. And then chaos truly began. The woman in black stood in the doorway like a storm cloud. The baby in her arms wailed louder, its cries slicing through the shocked silence. All eyes were fixed on her, every guest frozen as if the world itself had stopped spinning. She walked forward, her heels clicking against the marble floor. Her face was red with anger, but her voice was steady. My name is Vanessa, she said, holding the baby high for everyone to see. And this child is Richard's son. He promised me we would be a family. And now here I find him, dressed in a suit, about to marry another woman. Gasps filled the hall like thunder. Phones were out, cameras recording, whispers flying like wildfire. Clara staggered backward, her bouquet lying forgotten on the ground. Her lips trembled as she turned to Richard. Is it true? She whispered. Tell me she's lying. Richard's face was pale, his eyes darting wildly from Vanessa to Clara, then to the baby. He opened his mouth, but no words came. His silence was enough. Vanessa's voice grew sharper. You lied to me. You lied to her. You've been living two lives. And now, everyone will know who you really are. The crowd erupted again. Some shouted, others gasped, some even booed. Clara covered her face with her hands, tears streaming down her cheeks. Her perfect wedding day had collapsed into a nightmare. Deborah rushed to Richard's side, grabbing his arm. Don't say anything, she hissed through clenched teeth. But her panic only made things worse. Guests saw her desperation, saw her fear, and the truth became undeniable. James, standing tall beside Clara, wrapped an arm around her shoulders. Daughter, look at me, he said softly. This man does not deserve you. You must see the truth. But Clara pushed his hand away. Her whole body shook as she stared at Richard. Why? Why would you do this to me? To us? I trusted you. Richard finally spoke, his voice cracking. Clara, please, it's not what it looks like. I love you. She doesn't matter. I was going to end it with her. Vanessa's scream cut him off. End it? You told me you loved me. You told me we were forever. And what about your son? She held the baby up higher, his tiny fists waving in the air. Will you deny him too? Richard's mouth opened, but no sound came out. His silence was an admission louder than any words. The baby cried again. A pitiful sound that echoed through the hall like a bell of truth. Clara's legs buckled, and she collapsed to her knees, sobbing. I rushed forward to catch her, but before I could reach her, another sound ripped through the hall. A man's voice shouting from the entrance. Enough! Everyone turned toward the door. Another figure had appeared, his face hard, his eyes burning with fury. He wasn't a stranger. He wasn't Vanessa's friend. He wasn't from Richard's family. No, it was a man no one expected. Someone tied to the lies far deeper than any of us could imagine. And when he stepped inside, I knew the storm had only just begun. The word rang through the hall like a hammer on steel. Enough! Every head turned toward the entrance. The doors stood wide open, and in walked a man with broad shoulders, a commanding presence, and eyes so fierce they seemed to pierce through every soul in the room. He walked with confidence, every step echoing like a drumbeat. The crowd whispered in confusion. Who is he? Do you know him? What's happening? I knew exactly who he was. It was Richard's older brother, Michael Thompson. But he wasn't just Richard's brother. He was the one person who had always kept his distance from Richard's affairs, the one who never showed up to family gatherings, the one who lived in another state, managing the Thompson family business. I hadn't seen him in years, but I remembered his stern face, his sharp mind, and his cold way of speaking. Richard froze when he saw him. His color drained, and for the first time that day, fear flashed across his face. Michael. Michael's eyes burned. Don't say my name. Not here. Not now. The guests shifted nervously, sensing something bigger was about to explode. Deborah clutched Richard's arm tightly, but her lips trembled. She knew Michael had power, and if he was here, it wasn't for celebration. Clara, still kneeling on the floor, looked up, confused and broken. Who is this? She asked, her voice weak. James helped her to her feet, answering quietly. He's Richard's brother. Michael took a deep breath, then faced Clara directly. Yes, I am Richard's brother. And I came here today because I could not stay silent any longer. A hush fell over the room. Vanessa, holding her baby, stepped back warily, her eyes darting between the two brothers. What do you mean? Michael's voice thundered. I mean that Richard's lies run deeper than you all think. It's not just you, Vanessa. Not just this child. Not just Clara. He paused, his jaw tightening. There are more. The words hit like an earthquake. Gasps filled the hall. Clara staggered back, clutching her chest. More? What do you mean more? Michael's voice broke like a whip. Richard has been playing this game for years. Multiple women. Multiple lies. You think you're special to him, Vanessa? You think he planned a future with you, Clara? You're not the first, and you wouldn't have been the last. The hall erupted into chaos again. Guests shouted, some stood to leave, others leaned in closer to hear. The atmosphere was electric, heavy with disbelief and anger. Richard finally snapped. That's enough, Michael. Stop this madness. You don't know what you're talking about. But Michael only laughed bitterly. Don't I? I'm your brother. I've covered for you more times than I can count. I've watched you destroy lives while mother, he glared at Deborah. Turned a blind eye to it. I came here today because I refuse to let another innocent woman fall victim to your lies. Deborah stepped forward, her voice sharp and desperate. Michael, don't do this. This is family business. Not here, not in front of everyone. But Michael ignored her. He pulled out his phone and held it high. I have proof. Messages. Photos. Records. Do you want me to show them all? Gasps swept the room again. People craned their necks, desperate to see. Clara's face turned white. She whispered, Please no, tell me it's not true. Richard's voice cracked, trembling with rage. Michael, you're ruining everything. Michael's reply was cold. No, Richard. You ruined it yourself. Vanessa stepped forward suddenly, shaking with anger. So I wasn't the only one? There are others? And you still dared to stand up here and promise Clara forever? Tears rolled down her face as she clutched her baby tighter. You monster! The baby wailed louder, as if echoing her pain. The sound pierced the hall, drowning out even the murmurs of the crowd. Clara broke down. Her sobs were uncontrollable now. How could you? I gave you my heart, my trust, and you threw it all away. She fell to the ground again, her dress pooling around her like broken wings. I rushed to her side, holding her close, my own tears burning my eyes. Baby, you're not alone. Mama's here. But Clara pushed me gently away. She wasn't rejecting me. She was simply lost, drowning in her heartbreak. My chest ached to see her that way. Richard tried to move toward her, but James stepped in front, blocking him like a wall. Don't you dare touch her, James growled. His voice was filled with years of anger, years of abandonment, and yet also the instinct of a father protecting his child. The two men stared at each other, both tense, both ready to fight. And then Michael dropped the final blow. Tell them, Richard, he shouted. Tell them about the money. Tell them why you really wanted to marry Clara. The room froze again. Even the baby went silent, as if waiting for the answer. Clara's head snapped up, her face streaked with tears. Money? What money? Michael's eyes narrowed. Yes. He didn't want you, Clara. He wanted what you have, your inheritance. The savings your mother worked her hands to the bone for. The land, the investments. All of it. The crowd roared in shock. I felt my knees weaken. My savings? My land? Could it be? Clara turned to Richard, her eyes wide broken. Is it true? Were you using me? Was this whole marriage about money? Richard's face twisted. He opened his mouth, but before he could speak, there was a loud crash. One of the chandeliers hanging above the hall shook violently and came crashing down, shattering on the ground just a few feet from where the guests were standing. Glass flew everywhere. People screamed, rushing to the exits. Panic spread like wildfire. And in that moment of chaos, Richard bolted. He pushed past his mother, past the guards, and ran out of the hall into the darkening evening, leaving behind his bride, his brother, his lies, and his shame. The wedding was in ruins. The guests scattered. The truth hung heavy in the air. But deep inside me, I knew this storm was far from over. Because Richard running meant one thing. He had something to hide. Something even worse than what we already knew. And the truth was coming for us all. The chandelier's crash still echoed in my ears as guests screamed and scrambled to the exits. Glass littered the marble floor, glittering under the lights like sharp stars fallen from the sky. The wedding hall, once filled with laughter and music, had become a battlefield of broken trust and shattered dreams. And in the middle of the chaos, Richard ran. I saw him push past the panicked crowd, his suit tearing at the sleeve as he forced his way through the door. Deborah shouted after him, her voice shrill and desperate. Richard, come back. Don't you dare leave. But he didn't look back. He vanished into the night like a guilty shadow fleeing the light. Clara stood frozen, her face pale, her veil torn. For a moment, she looked like a porcelain doll someone had dropped, fragile and cracked. Then suddenly she screamed. A scream so raw it tore through the air, silencing even the cries of frightened guests. Why? She cried, collapsing to the floor again. Why would he do this to me? I rushed to her side, holding her trembling hands. Baby, please breathe. Don't let this break you. But her eyes were distant, filled with pain so deep it seemed endless. Mama, he lied about everything. I don't even know who I married. Her voice cracked, and she buried her face in my shoulder. My heart ached with helplessness. No mother wants to see her child suffer like that. Michael, standing nearby, looked grim but steady. We can't let him get away, he said, his voice low but urgent. If Richard runs now, we may never uncover everything he's been hiding. James stepped forward, fists clenched. I'll find him. He won't escape this time. Deborah, however, was frantic. She grabbed Michael's arm. Stop. Don't chase him. He's my son. He doesn't need punishment. He needs protection. Michael shook her off harshly. He needs truth, Mother. Not your endless excuses. You've shielded him his whole life, and look at what he's become. A liar, a manipulator, a fraud. The two glared at each other, and for a moment it looked like mother and son might tear each other apart right there. Meanwhile, Vanessa, still holding the baby, stepped closer to Clara. Her voice softened. I didn't know, Clara. I swear I didn't know he was playing both of us. If I had, I would have come sooner. Clara looked at her bitterly, tears streaking her cheeks. You have his child. You have what I wanted. Her words cut deep, filled with heartbreak and envy. Vanessa's own eyes filled with tears. And yet you're the one he stood beside at the altar. Don't envy me, Clara. This child will grow up with the stain of his father's betrayal. None of us won. Her words quieted the hall. Even in their bitterness, they carried a painful truth. The low moment settled in. The silence of broken dreams, the sound of sobbing guests, the emptiness left behind when love collapses. For a while, we just stood there in the ruins of what was supposed to be a celebration. But storms never end in silence. As the staff began sweeping up glass, a guard entered, panting heavily. Mrs. Thompson, he shouted, addressing Deborah. We tried to stop him, but Richard took one of the cars from the parking lot. He's gone. Deborah gasped, nearly fainting. Oh God. Michael stepped closer, his voice dark. Where did he go? The guard hesitated. I don't know. But he left a bag in the car he didn't take. He held up a black leather bag. My stomach tightened. A bag? Why would Richard leave a bag behind? Michael snatched it from the guard and unzipped it right there. Inside were stacks of documents, some bound with rubber bands, others loose and crumpled. He pulled one out and his face hardened. Bank records, he muttered. Transfers. Large sums. To accounts in different names. Clara's eyes widened. What? What does that mean? Michael handed her a paper. It means Richard wasn't just lying to you. He was stealing. Laundering money. Using people. This marriage, it wasn't just about love or inheritance. It was part of something bigger. The room grew heavy with dread. James clenched his fists. So he's not only a liar but a criminal. Deborah shouted, her voice trembling. No. That's not true. My son wouldn't. Michael cut her off, thrusting the bag into her chest. See for yourself, Mother. These are his secrets. Your precious Richard isn't just a groom who betrayed his bride. He's a man running from the law. The guests gasped again, their whispers spreading like fire. The wedding wasn't just ruined. It was a scandal now, one that could destroy not only Richard but the Thompson family name. Clara stared at the papers in her hands, her body shaking. So everything he said, every promise, it was all a lie. He never loved me. He only wanted what I had. Her voice broke into sobs again, and this time I couldn't stop my own tears. But then a thought struck me. If Richard had been hiding money, if he had multiple women, if he had gone this far to deceive everyone, what else was he hiding? The answer came sooner than I expected. As we stood in the hall trying to piece together the puzzle, one of the guests' phones rang loudly. A woman picked it up, her face pale. She turned to the crowd, her voice trembling. The police. They're asking about Richard Thompson. They say. They've been looking for him for months. Everyone froze. Michael's jaw tightened. Months? For what? The woman swallowed hard. For fraud. And for attempted murder. The hall fell into stunned silence. Clara gasped so hard it sounded like her breath had been stolen. Deborah collapsed into a chair, shaking her head in denial. And me? My heart dropped into the pit of my stomach. Attempted murder? That wasn't just betrayal. That was darkness far deeper than I had imagined. Before anyone could speak, the sound of sirens pierced the night outside. Blue and red lights flashed through the stained glass windows of the hall. The police had arrived. And they weren't here for a wedding. The wail of sirens grew louder, cutting through the night air like a warning bell. Blue and red lights flashed against the stained glass windows of the hall, painting the chaos inside in colors of fear. Guests who had not already left pressed themselves against the walls, whispering nervously. The scent of smoke from the shattered chandelier wires lingered, mixing with the metallic tang of spilled champagne. The doors swung open. 2 officers entered first, hands resting on their belts, followed by 3 more. Their presence silenced the hall instantly. One of them, a tall woman with a stern face, stepped forward and raised her voice. "Where is Richard Thompson?" All eyes shifted to Deborah. She sat slumped in a chair, her makeup smeared, clutching the bag of documents Michael had uncovered. Her lips trembled, but she didn't speak. Michael broke the silence. "He's gone. He ran out through the front doors 20 minutes ago. Stole a car from the lot." The officer's jaw tightened. "We'll put out an alert immediately." She signaled to her men who moved toward the exits, speaking into their radios. Then she turned back to the crowd. "Everyone remain calm. We need statements. This is not just about fraud. Richard Thompson is a wanted suspect in an attempted murder investigation." Gasps filled the room again, louder this time. Clara's knees buckled, and I rushed to steady her. Her eyes were wide, glassy, searching for answers that no one could give. "Attempted murder?" she whispered. "Mama, what does that mean?" "He tried to kill someone." Michael's face was grim. "It means he's even worse than we thought." Deborah shook her head violently, her voice breaking. No, that can't be true. My son would never." But the officer cut her off. "Mrs. Thompson, we have evidence linking Richard to a violent altercation 6 months ago. A man nearly died. Your son disappeared shortly after." Vanessa gasped, clutching her baby tighter. "Oh God, he told me he was traveling for work at that time." The officer nodded slowly, her eyes scanning the crowd. "If anyone here has information about his whereabouts in the past few months, speak now. Hiding him will only make things worse." The hall remained silent, heavy with fear. Some guests avoided eye contact, while others whispered among themselves. The weight of Richard's sins pressed down on us all. Clara pulled away from me suddenly, her voice trembling but determined. I need to know everything. Officer, please, who is he accused of trying to kill?" The officer hesitated, then answered. "A business partner. His name is Jonathan Hale." At that name, Michael stiffened visibly. His fists clenched, his jaw locked. Clara noticed. "You know him?" she asked. Michael's eyes darkened. "Yes. He was my friend. My closest friend. And Richard tried to kill him over money." The silence that followed was suffocating. Clara's breath came in shallow gasps as the weight of the truth crushed her. "So it's true, he really is a monster." I held her hand, but before I could speak, the sound of a phone ringing broke the silence. Everyone turned. It was one of the officers. He answered quickly, listened, then his expression shifted from stern to alarmed. "Say that again?" He paused, then barked. "We're on our way." He hung up and faced the room. His words dropped like a bomb. The car Richard stole was just found abandoned near the river. And there was blood on the driver's seat. The hall erupted in screams and gasps once more. Clara froze, her face drained of color. Deborah collapsed to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. And deep in my chest, a chilling realization settled in. Richard wasn't just running. Something darker was unfolding. And the river was only the beginning. The riverbank was darker than I expected, the moonlight barely cutting through the mist that hovered above the water. Police cars lined the dirt road, their flashing lights reflecting off the rippling surface. The sound of radios crackling and officers shouting orders filled the night air. I clutched Clara's hand tightly as we stepped out of James's car, my heart hammering in my chest. Clara looked pale, her eyes swollen from crying, but she refused to stay behind. "I have to see for myself," she whispered to me. "If I don't, I'll never believe it." The officer in charge, the same tall woman from the wedding hall, walked toward us briskly. "You shouldn't be here," she said firmly. "This is an active investigation." Michael stepped in front of Clara. "She deserves to know. Richard was her husband for better or worse. Don't shut her out now." The officer studied Clara's trembling frame, then sighed. "Stay back. Don't interfere." We followed her toward the taped-off area. There it was, the stolen car, half submerged in mud near the edge of the water. Its headlights still faintly glowed, casting an eerie beam across the river's surface. The driver's door was wide open, and the seat was smeared with dark stains. Blood. Clara gasped, covering her mouth. Oh God. Mama, that's his blood. No one answered. The silence itself was the answer. James muttered under his breath. If he's hurt, he won't have gone far. Vanessa, who had insisted on coming despite holding her child, shifted uneasily. Or maybe someone else found him first. Her words sent a shiver down my spine. The officers searched the shoreline with flashlights, their beams cutting through the mist. A dog barked as the K-9 unit was brought in, sniffing near the car before pulling toward the woods. We've got a trail, one of the handlers shouted. Clara lurched forward, but I held her back. No, baby. Let them do their job. She shook her head violently. Mama, if Richard's alive, I need to see him. I need to ask him why he did this to me. Why he destroyed everything. Her voice cracked, and tears streamed down her cheeks. Michael placed a hand on her shoulder. Clara, listen to me. If he's alive, he's dangerous. You don't want to be the one who finds him first. But I knew Clara's heart. She wasn't thinking about safety, she was thinking about closure. Minutes dragged on like hours as the officers fanned out into the woods. The night was filled with the rustle of leaves, the distant splash of water, the hum of insects. My stomach knotted with dread. Then suddenly, over here, a voice shouted from the darkness. We all froze. The sound of rushing feet followed as more officers pushed toward the river's bend. Clara tried to run, but Michael grabbed her arm. Wait! But she wrenched free, desperation fueling her strength. No. I have to know. By the time we caught up with her, the officers were clustered around something on the ground. Clara shoved through them, and I followed close behind, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. And there he was. Richard. Lying face down in the mud, his shirt torn, his body trembling. His hands were stained red, his hair matted with dirt. He coughed violently, spitting out water and blood. Clara froze, staring at him as though she'd seen a ghost. Richard, she whispered. One of the officers barked. Stay back. He's under arrest. They rolled him over roughly, handcuffing his wrists behind his back. His face was pale, his lips cracked, but his eyes still carried that same defiance, that same arrogance. And when they landed on Clara, he smirked. You still came, he rasped, his voice weak but mocking. Even after everything, you couldn't stay away. Clara's whole body shook. You ruined my life. You lied to me. You. Her voice broke as she screamed. Why, Richard? Why did you do this to me? For a moment silence hung heavy. Then slowly Richard leaned his head back and laughed. A weak, broken laugh but filled with something chilling. You really want the truth, Clara? He whispered. The marriage, the lies, the money, it wasn't about you. It was never about you. He coughed again, blood dripping from his lips. It was about him. He turned his head toward Michael. The words struck like lightning. Clara gasped and Michael froze, his expression unreadable. What do you mean? Clara stammered. But Richard only grinned faintly, his eyes locked on Michael's. Ask your brother-in-law. He knows why I did it. The officers dragged him to his feet before anyone could question further. He stumbled, coughing, but kept smirking at Michael. Clara spun to Michael, her eyes wide with terror and confusion. What is he talking about? Michael, what does he mean? Michael opened his mouth, then shut it again, his jaw tight, his eyes avoiding hers. The silence was deafening. Clara grabbed his arm, shaking him. Tell me, what does he mean? But Michael didn't answer. And that silence was worse than any words. The riverbank fell into a heavy silence after Richard's words. The police dragged him toward a waiting van, his cuffs glinting under the flashing red and blue lights. But his smirk lingered in the air, poisoning everything he left behind. Clara turned on Michael, her eyes burning. What did he mean? Michael, answer me. Michael's jaw tightened. He's lying. That's what he does. But his voice wasn't steady. It cracked under the weight of something unsaid. I saw it, Clara saw it, everyone saw it. Clara's hands trembled as she pointed at him. No. That wasn't just a lie. He said it like he knew something about you. Something big. Michael, what are you hiding? Deborah, still sitting on the ground nearby, shook her head violently. Don't listen to him, Clara. Richard's sick, twisted. He'll say anything to drag us all down with him. But Clara wasn't listening. She stepped closer to Michael, her voice breaking. Please, don't do this to me too. Don't keep me in the dark like he did. Just tell me the truth. Michael ran a hand over his face, looking older than I'd ever seen him. His eyes met mine for a brief moment, and in that look, I read the struggle inside him. He wanted to protect her. But from what? Finally he spoke, his voice low. It's not what you think. Then what is it? Clara demanded. Before he could answer, one of the officers interrupted. We're taking Thompson into custody now. We'll need formal statements from all of you at the station. The moment shattered. Richard was shoved into the police van, still laughing weakly, his eyes locked on Michael until the doors slammed shut. The van drove off, leaving only dust and questions behind. Clara stood rooted to the ground, her chest heaving. Mama, she whispered, turning to me. What if Michael's involved? What if he knew all along? I pulled her into my arms, though my own heart was racing. Baby, don't jump to conclusions. Sometimes silence is just fear. We'll find out the truth soon enough. But deep down I couldn't shake the unease. The officers began clearing the scene, marking the car for towing. James placed a firm hand on Michael's shoulder. If you know something, say it now. Don't let her drown in doubt. Michael didn't answer. He just walked toward his car, his back stiff, his silence louder than words. Clara pulled away from me, tears streaking her face. I can't take this anymore. First Richard, now Michael. Everyone I trust keeps secrets. She sank to her knees in the mud, sobbing uncontrollably. Vanessa, holding her baby, stepped forward. Her voice was soft but steady. Clara, listen to me. Secrets always come out. Whether Michael talks or not, the truth will find you. It always does. The way she said it, with such certainty, made the hair on my arm stand up. Just then Michael's phone rang. Loud, sharp, cutting through the night. Everyone froze. He glanced at the screen and for the first time, fear flashed across his face. Clara saw it too. Who is it? She asked, her voice trembling. Michael didn't answer. He just declined the call and shoved the phone back into his pocket. But before he could take another step, the phone rang again. And this time, I caught a glimpse of the caller ID. It wasn't a name. It was just one word in bold letters. Hale. Jonathan Hale. The man Richard was accused of trying to kill. Clara gasped. Michael. Why is he calling you? The silence that followed was unbearable. The sound of Michael's phone vibrating again seemed louder than the river itself. That one word glowing on the screen, Hale, froze us all in place. Clara's voice cracked as she spoke, her eyes wide with disbelief. Michael, answer it. Right now. Michael hesitated, his thumb hovering over the screen. His silence was louder than any siren, heavier than any truth. James stepped forward, his jaw clenched. If you don't answer, I will. Reluctantly, Michael swiped the screen and lifted the phone to his ear. Hello. His voice was flat, cautious. We all leaned closer, straining to hear the other side. At first, there was nothing but static. Then a deep, raspy voice cut through. Michael, it's me. Jonathan Hale. Clara gasped so loudly it echoed across the riverbank. Deborah clutched her chest. The man Richard had supposedly tried to kill was alive. Michael's hand trembled slightly, but he steadied it. Jonathan, where are you? The voice laughed bitterly. Where I've always been. Watching. Waiting. And now. I think it's time everyone knew the truth. Clara stepped closer, nearly snatching the phone. Mr. Hale. Please, what truth? Richard said this was all about Michael. What does that mean? There was a pause on the line, then a sigh. You deserve answers, Clara. But not over the phone. Come tomorrow. Both of you. Meet me at my estate at noon. Alone. Why alone? Michael asked sharply. Because this isn't for the police, or your mother, or anyone else. This is between us. And if you want to protect Clara, you'll bring her. The line went dead. The silence that followed was suffocating. Clara's chest heaved as she turned on Michael. Protect me? From what, Michael? Why does Jonathan Hale want to see us together? What have you been hiding from me? Michael pocketed the phone, his face grim. It's not what you think. Clara snapped, her voice sharp as glass. Stop saying that. First Richard, now Jonathan, now you. How many lies do I have to survive before someone finally tells me the truth? Deborah, trembling, tried to intervene. Clara, please don't go tomorrow. Jonathan Hale is dangerous. If Richard attacked him once, he could do it again. Michael cut her off. Richard attacked Jonathan because of me. Not Clara. Not money. Me. The words dropped like a bomb. Clara's mouth fell open. James froze, his fists clenched at his sides. Even I felt my knees weaken. What do you mean? Clara whispered. Michael looked away, his jaw tightening. Tomorrow. You'll hear it tomorrow. If Hale wants to talk, let him. But know this, Clara, whatever you hear, it doesn't change how much I've tried to protect you. Tears spilled down Clara's cheeks, but her voice was cold. Protect me? Michael, you're the one breaking me. Every silence is another wound. Every half-truth another betrayal. I can't keep doing this. She turned away from him, her shoulders shaking. Vanessa placed a gentle hand on her arm, whispering, sometimes the truth hurts more than the lie. But you'll heal faster if you hear it. Clara nodded weakly, though her whole body trembled. The police, still working nearby, hadn't noticed the storm unraveling among us. They loaded Richard's car onto a tow truck, while the K9 unit searched further along the river. But none of us cared anymore. Richard was no longer the center of this nightmare. Michael was. As we drove home, the silence in the car was suffocating. Clara stared out the window, her reflection pale in the glass. Michael sat rigid in the driver's seat, his knuckles white against the wheel. Every turn of the road felt like a countdown to tomorrow. When we reached the house, Clara went straight to her room and slammed the door. I could hear her muffled sobs through the wall. My chest ached, but I knew she needed her space. James cornered Michael in the living room. You'd better come clean, brother. Because if Jonathan Hale tells her something tomorrow that you should have said today, you'll lose her forever. Michael's eyes darkened. You think I don't know that? You think I haven't carried this weight for years? I stepped in quickly. Then why not tell her now, Michael? Why wait for tomorrow? His voice dropped to a whisper. Because once I say it, none of us will ever be the same. And I don't know if she's ready for that. The way he said it chilled me. Whatever secret he carried, it wasn't small. It was something that could shatter everything we thought we knew. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the house, every gust of wind outside felt like a warning. Clara cried herself to sleep. Michael paced the hallway, and Deborah sat downstairs clutching her rosary beads, muttering prayers under her breath. And when dawn broke, it brought no peace. Only the promise of answers, and the fear of what those answers might destroy. At exactly noon, Clara and Michael stood by the car, ready to leave for Jonathan Hale's estate. Clara's face was pale but resolute. She glanced at me one last time. Mama, whatever happens today, I need to know, even if it breaks me. I hugged her tightly, fighting back tears. Baby, remember this. The truth may hurt, but lies will kill you. Go. Face it. She nodded and got into the car. I watched as the car disappeared down the road, carrying my daughter toward a truth I wasn't sure she was ready for. My chest tightened with dread. Hours passed. The house was silent, heavy. Vanessa rocked her baby in the corner. Deborah sat staring at the floor, lips moving silently in prayer. James paced endlessly. Then just as the sun dipped low, my phone rang. The number on the screen made my blood run cold. It was Clara's. But when I answered, it wasn't Clara's voice that spoke. It was Jonathan Hale's. And his words froze me in place. Your daughter knows now. But if you want to see her alive again, you'll listen carefully. My blood turned to ice the moment I heard Jonathan Hale's voice on Clara's phone. Your daughter knows now, he said calmly, almost too calmly. But if you want to see her alive again, you'll listen carefully. I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. What have you done to her? Where is Clara? A low chuckle came through the line. She's with me. Safe for now. But safety comes at a cost. James leaned closer, whispering urgently. Put him on speaker. I did, and Hale's voice filled the room. Michael froze in the doorway, his face pale. Deborah's rosary beads slipped through her trembling fingers and scattered across the floor. Vanessa held her baby tighter, her eyes wide with fear. "What do you want?" I demanded, my voice breaking. Hale paused, then spoke slowly, deliberately. "I want the truth to be exposed. All of it. Not just Richard's lies but Michael's too. If Michael doesn't tell Clara the full story by tomorrow midnight, you'll never see her again." Michael stepped forward, his face twisted in panic. "Jonathan, don't drag her into this. This is between us." Hale's laugh was cold. "Oh, but she's already in it. She deserves to know why Richard came after me. She deserves to know what you've been hiding. And you deserve to face what you did." Clara's voice suddenly broke through the line, muffled but desperate. "Mama, don't worry about me, I'll be okay. Just..." Her cry was cut short, and Hale's voice returned, sharper now. "No more games. You have until tomorrow. If Michael stays silent, Clara pays the price." The line went dead. For a moment the room was utterly silent. The only sound was Deborah's ragged breathing. Then James exploded, slamming his fist on the table. "Enough! Michael, what in God's name are you hiding? What did you do that has Hale holding Clara hostage?" Michael's face was a mask of torment. He sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. "I never wanted her to get dragged into this. I thought I could keep her safe." I grabbed his arm, my voice trembling with fury. "Safe? Michael, she is in that man's hands right now. You need to talk. Tell us the truth before it's too late." But he shook his head, his voice barely a whisper. "If I say it, everything changes. You'll all hate me." James pulled him up by the collar. "We already hate you if you don't. Choose." Michael's lips parted, but before he could speak, the doorbell rang. The sound was sharp, urgent, echoing through the silent house. We all froze. James loosened his grip and looked toward the door. Who could that be? Vanessa's baby started crying, as if sensing the fear in the air. Slowly, I walked toward the door, my legs shaking. My hand hovered over the handle as my heart pounded in my chest. When I finally pulled it open, the sight before me made my breath catch. Standing there was a man I never thought I'd see again. Jonathan Hale. Alive, smirking, and alone. For a moment, my breath refused to come. Jonathan Hale stood on my porch as though the phone call had never happened. His sharp suit was spotless, his hair slicked back, his smirk carrying the arrogance of a man who held all the cards. "Behind me," James muttered. "But you just called us." "How?" Hale cut him off with a low chuckle. "Phones are wonderful things, aren't they? They let me be in two places at once. Or at least they make you think I am." My heart pounded. "Where's my daughter?" His eyes gleamed. "Safe. For now." Michael stepped forward, fury in his voice. "Jonathan, if you've hurt Clara." Hale raised a finger, silencing him. "Michael, you've always been the brave one, haven't you? Brave enough to betray me. Brave enough to steal what was mine." Michael's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. Clara's muffled cry from the phone replayed in my mind, slicing me like a knife. I wanted to grab Hale by the collar and shake the truth out of him, but the icy calm in his eyes stopped me. This man wasn't bluffing. James stepped between us, his fists clenched. "What do you want from us? Why involve Clara?" Hale's smile vanished, replaced by a look of pure menace. "Because Clara is the only leverage I need to make Michael confess. You see, Richard was sloppy, impulsive, but Michael knew exactly what he was doing. He thought he could bury the past. But I don't forget. And I don't forgive." Deborah, her face streaked with tears, cried out, "No, Michael is not like Richard. My son would never." Hale's gaze snapped to her, cold and cruel. "Your son nearly cost me my life." The room froze. I turned to Michael, my stomach sinking. "Is that true? Did you?" My words caught in my throat. "Michael, did you try to kill him?" Michael's eyes flickered with pain. "It's not that simple."
Hale lafet bitterli.
"It's exactly that simple. He wanted my empire, my deals, my wealth, and when I refused to share, he set me up. That night, when Richard came at me, he wasn't acting alone. Michael was behind it." The words slammed into me like thunder. My knees trembled, but I forced myself to stand tall. Michael, say something. Deny it. But Michael didn't. His silence was deafening. Clara's voice from the phone echoed in my head again. What if Michael's involved? What if he knew all along? James shoved Michael against the wall, rage in his eyes. Tell me he's lying. Tell me. Michael struggled, his face pale. I didn't try to kill him. I swear it. But yes, I was involved. I made deals with Hale, deals that went wrong. Richard was supposed to scare him, not nearly kill him. I never wanted blood on my hands. Gasps filled the room. Deborah sank into a chair, clutching her rosary again. Vanessa's eyes widened as she held her baby tighter. Hale simirket. You see? Half-truths. That's all he ever gives. He says he didn't want blood, but he stood to gain everything if I died. And now Clara is paying for his sins. I shook my head, my chest aching. Please, leave Clara out of this. She's innocent. Hale's eyes softened just slightly, which is why she's still alive. For now. But if you want to keep her that way, Michael has until tomorrow midnight to confess everything publicly. If he doesn't, Clara disappears forever. The threat hung heavy in the air. James growled, stepping forward. And how do we even know she's alive? You could be lying. Hale pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, and tossed it onto the table. A video played. Clara, tied to a chair, tears streaming down her face. Mama, please don't let him hurt me, she cried before the screen went black. My heart shattered. Michael's face crumpled, anguish twisting his features. Jonathan, don't do this. I'll confess. I'll say whatever you want. But Hale shook his head. Not to me. To the world. Tomorrow night, 8 p.m. A press conference. Every word, every crime, every betrayal. If you leave one thing out, if you lie to protect yourself, she dies. The room was so silent I could hear the ticking of the clock on the wall. Finally, Hale straightened his jacket. I'll take my leave now. You have less than 24 hours. He turned toward the door, but before stepping out, he looked back at me. Mrs. Thompson, pray for your daughter. She's going to need it. The door shut behind him. The moment he was gone, James spun on Michael. We can't trust him. Even if you confess, he might kill Clara anyway. Michael's face was buried in his hands. I know. Deborah sobbed uncontrollably. Vanessa rocked her baby, whispering a prayer under her breath. I stood frozen, my mind racing, my heart breaking. Then suddenly Michael looked up, his eyes hard, determined. We won't wait until tomorrow. We'll find Clara tonight. James narrowed his eyes. And how exactly do you plan to do that? Michael's jaw tightened. Because I know where Jonathan keeps his secrets. And if Clara's his leverage, that's where she'll be. I leaned forward, hope sparking in my chest. Where, Michael? Where is she? Michael's lips parted, and he whispered the words that sent chills down my spine. At his old warehouse, the one where it all began. The name alone sent shivers down my spine. The warehouse. It was the place whispered about but never discussed in detail. The site where Richard had attacked Jonathan Hale, the root of all this chaos. To think Clara might be trapped there made my stomach twist with dread. Michael paced the living room like a caged animal. We don't have time to call the police. By the time they get their paperwork, Clara could be gone. James crossed his arms. And you think walking into Hale's den without backup is smart? He's expecting you. This could be a trap. Of course it's a trap, Michael shot back, his voice low but fierce. But what choice do we have? Hale doesn't want the police involved. If we call them, he'll know. And then Clara. He couldn't finish. His voice cracked. I stepped closer to him, placing a trembling hand on his arm. Then we go. Tonight. But we don't go blind. Vanessa shifted uneasily in her seat, rocking her baby. What if he has guards? What if he's waiting with a gun? You could all be walking into death. Her words sent a chill through the room, but James's eyes blazed. If my granddaughter is in that warehouse, then death can wait its turn. I'll walk into hell itself to bring her back. A heavy silence followed. Finally, Michael grabbed a set of keys off the table. Then let's move. We piled into James's car, the night air biting cold against our faces as we stepped outside. The ride was long and tense, every bump in the road making my heart jump. No one spoke much, though the silence was loud with unspoken fears. As we neared the outskirts of town, the streets grew darker, lonelier. Streetlights flickered like dying stars, and abandoned buildings loomed in the distance. Finally, Michael pointed. There. That's it. The warehouse stood like a monster in the night, rusted metal walls, broken windows, and graffiti splattered across its sides. The place reeked of secrets, of old sins that refused to die. James parked a few yards away, killing the headlights. We sat in the darkness, the only sound our heavy breathing. I whispered, "What if we're too late?" Michael shook his head. "We're not. He wouldn't risk killing her yet. Not until he gets what he wants." We slipped out of the car, moving cautiously through the shadows. James carried a crowbar, his knuckles white. Michael had nothing but his resolve, though his every step looked like he was marching toward his own execution. The warehouse door groaned as James pried it open, the sound echoing like thunder in the empty night. We slipped inside, our flashlights slicing through the thick darkness. The air was damp, heavy with the smell of oil and rust. Our footsteps echoed on the concrete floor. Somewhere in the distance, water dripped steadily, the sound maddening in the silence. Then faintly I heard it. A muffled sobi. Clara. I hissed, my heart leaping. We rushed forward, our beams darting across crates and machinery. The sobbing grew louder. Around a corner, we found a chair, rope, and hair that I knew too well. Clara. She was tied up, her head hanging low, her body trembling. I rushed to her side, dropping to my knees. "Baby. I'm here, I'm here." Her head lifted slowly, her eyes red and swollen. "Mama," she whispered weakly. Tears blurred my vision. James began working at the ropes while Michael kept watch, his flashlight darting through the shadows. But then, a sound, a click, the unmistakable sound of a gun being cocked. From the shadows, a figure stepped forward, the barrel gleaming in the dim light. "Jonathan Hale. You really thought it would be that easy?" He sneered, leveling the gun at Michael's chest. The sight of Jonathan Hale stepping out of the shadows froze us all. The dim glow of the flashlight reflected off the steel in his hand, its barrel pointed straight at Michael's chest. "Don't move," he ordered, his voice like ice. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. I pulled Clara close, shielding her even though I knew I was no match for a bullet. James tensed, the crowbar in his hand shaking ever so slightly, his fury barely restrained. Michael raised his hands slowly, his jaw tight. "Jonathan, you don't need to do this." "Oh, I don't. Hallucinated. You tried to destroy me. You used your brother as a pawn, then pretended your hands were clean. And now you dare walk into my place thinking you'll just take her back." He jabbed the gun toward Clara. "She's the only reason you're still breathing." Clara whimpered, burying her face against my chest. Rage boiled in me, hotter than fear. "You've made your point, Jonathan. You've tortured this family enough. If you want revenge, take it on me. But leave my daughter out of it." Hale's eyes narrowed. For a second, I thought he might lower the gun, but then he laughed. "Oh, you're brave, aren't you? But no. This isn't about you, Grandma. This is about him." His gaze cut back to Michael. "And tonight, Michael answers for everything." James took a step forward, his voice thunderous. "If you pull that trigger, I swear you won't leave this warehouse alive." "Careful, old man," Hale warned, swinging the gun toward him. "One wrong move, and you'll be the first to drop." The air was thick with terror. I could feel the walls closing in, the darkness pressing down. Clara's small sobs echoed like daggers in my ears. Michael spoke again, his voice steady despite the weapon aimed at him. "Jonathan, if you kill me, you'll never get what you want. My confession. The public humiliation. The empire you think I stole from you. You'll lose everything." For a moment, Hale hesitated. His eyes flickered with calculation. I could see the war inside him, vengeance versus pride. Then James, bold as ever, made his move. With a roar, he swung the crowbar toward Hale. The gunshot split the air like lightning. I screamed as sparks flew from a nearby pipe, the bullet ricocheting off metal. Hale stumbled back, but his aim stayed true, the gun still in his grip. James raised the crowbar again, but Hale's next shot grazed his shoulder, sending him sprawling to the floor. No! Clara cried, struggling against the rope still binding her hands. Blood seeped through James's shirt, but his eyes burned with defiance. You'll have to do better than that, he growled, clutching the wound. Michael seized the moment, lunging at Hale. The two men crashed into a stack of crates, the gun clattering to the floor. I scrambled forward, desperate to grab it, but the fight between them was brutal, fists flying, grunts echoing through the warehouse.
Clara screamed. Mama!
Get the gun! I dove for it, my fingers brushing the cold steel just as Hale slammed Michael against the wall. He reached for the weapon too, but I snatched it up first. My hand shook violently as I aimed it at him. Stop! My voice cracked, but I held firm. It's over, Jonathan. Let my family go. Hale froze, his chest heaving, sweat glistening on his brow. For the first time I saw fear flicker in his eyes. But then he smiled. Slowly. Darkly. You don't have the guts, he whispered. My hands trembled harder. He was right, I had never fired a gun in my life. My finger hovered over the trigger, my whole body shaking with indecision. James groaned from the floor, his voice weak. Do it, Margaret, do it before he... Suddenly Hale lunged forward, faster than I expected. His hand closed around my wrist, twisting it painfully. The gun clattered to the floor again, sliding across the concrete. Michael pounced, tackling Hale to the ground. The two men rolled, grappling desperately. Every punch, every gasp was a battle for control. And then, as if fate itself had intervened, the gun stopped at Clara's feet. Her eyes widened. Her tied hands fumbled frantically at the ropes until they snapped loose. She grabbed the weapon, her small fingers clutching it awkwardly. Stop! She screamed, her voice piercing the chaos. Both men froze, their chests heaving, their faces bloodied. Clara's arm shook violently as she held the gun pointed at Hale. Her eyes filled with tears. You hurt my family. You tried to ruin everything. I should shoot you. Hale stared at her, stunned, but then he smirked again. Go on, little girl. Do it. Be just like your uncle. Michael's face twisted with horror. Clara, no. Don't listen to him. Put it down. James, still bleeding on the floor, croaked weakly. Clara, you're stronger than this. Don't let him turn you into him. Clara's chest heaved, the gun shaking in her trembling hands. Her finger tightened on the trigger. And just as she seemed ready to make her choice, a sudden burst of light filled the warehouse, flashing red and blue. Police sirens wailed outside. Doors slammed. Heavy boots pounded on concrete. Police! Drop your weapons! Dozens of officers stormed the warehouse, their guns drawn. The timing was too perfect. Too precise. Someone had tipped them off. And as they surrounded us, Hale began to laugh, a deep, terrifying laugh that echoed through the steel walls. Because in his eyes, this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The warehouse was chaos, sirens screaming, boots thundering, shouts echoing through the metal walls. Officers swarmed Jonathan Hale, pinning him to the ground as he spat curses and threats. His laughter, chilling and defiant, still rang in my ears. Clara collapsed into my arms, sobbing. Mama, I thought I'd never see you again. I held her tight, tears streaming down my face. You're safe now, baby. That's all that matters. James groaned as paramedics rushed to his side, pressing bandages to his bleeding shoulder. He still managed a grin. Told you. I wasn't going down that easy. Michael stood frozen, his chest heaving, his eyes locked on Hale as he was dragged away in cuffs. Their gazes met for a split second. Two men bound by secrets and sins too heavy to ignore. Hale smirked one last time before disappearing into the night under flashing lights. The ride to the station felt endless. Questions swirled. Papers were signed. Statements taken. By dawn, exhaustion weighed on us all. Clara slept against my shoulder, her face streaked with dried tears, while I sat quietly, my thoughts heavy. The following day, the press conference Hale had demanded became Michael's stage of truth. Cameras flashed, microphones crowded his face, and the world held its breath. With trembling hands, Michael confessed everything. His dealings with Hale, the mistakes that had spiraled into disaster, the night Richard nearly killed him, and the choices that haunted him still. I thought I could outsmart a devil, he said, voice breaking. But all I did was bring him closer to my family. And my niece paid the price. I will carry this guilt for the rest of my life. The world heard. The headlines roared. But for us, it wasn't about the world. It was about healing. In the weeks that followed, Clara grew quieter, older in spirit, though her smile began to return little by little. James healed slowly but proudly, often reminding her. Courage isn't about holding a gun. It's about knowing when to put it down. Michael faced his punishment, not in prison, but in the long road of redemption. He stayed close, helping Clara rebuild, though trust was a slow seed to grow. As for me, I sat on my porch in Texas one evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon, my granddaughter's laughter drifting from inside the house. I picked up my phone and spoke directly to you, the ones listening to my story. My name is Margaret Thompson. I'm 72 years old, speaking from the heart of Texas. If you've walked with me through this journey, I want you to remember one thing. Family is tested not in easy times but in storms. We don't always choose what happens to us, but we can choose how we fight and who we fight for. Clara's strength saved us all. And maybe, just maybe, yours can save you too. I paused, smiling softly, though my voice still trembled. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you don't miss more stories like this. And before you go, tell me, from which part of the country are you watching? Because every corner of this land has stories waiting to be told. And I'll be here, ready to share them. The camera faded to black, but my heart felt lighter. The storm had passed. For now,